Hi, I'm Victoria Sterling. 5 years ago, my childhood best friend Cassandra deliberately destroyed my wedding day in front of 200 guests, costing me my marriage, my reputation, and nearly my sanity. Last month, she walked into my bridal consultation as the head coordinator for the most exclusive wedding planning firm in Manhattan, professionally obligated to make my second wedding absolutely perfect. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about forgiveness, success, and the power of transforming your greatest betrayal into your ultimate triumph. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning of June 15, 2019, I woke up in the presidential suite of the Grandview Manor, with the kind of nervous excitement that only comes once in a lifetime. After 18 months of meticulous planning, my wedding day had finally arrived. The venue overlooked the Hudson River, adorned with white peonies and cascading greenery that had taken 3 florists working around the clock to perfect. Every detail had been carefully orchestrated to create the fairy tale wedding I had dreamed about since childhood. My wedding dress, a custom Vera Wang creation with intricate beadwork that caught the morning light like scattered diamonds, hung from the mahogany armoire. The cathedral-length veil had belonged to my grandmother, passed down through 3 generations of sterling women who had worn it on their own wedding days. Everything felt magical, blessed, and perfectly aligned with the future I had envisioned with my fiancé, Jonathan Matthews. Jonathan was everything I had hoped to find in a life partner. We had met during our final year at Columbia Business School, where his quiet intelligence and unwavering integrity had distinguished him from the ambitious but often superficial men who populated our program. He treated everyone with respect regardless of their social status or professional connections, volunteered at a literacy program in Harlem every Saturday morning, and possessed the kind of genuine character that becomes more apparent and more attractive over time. Our relationship had developed gradually over 2 years of study groups, coffee shop conversations, and weekend adventures exploring New York City. When he proposed during a private dinner at the restaurant where we had shared our first official date, the ring was exactly what I would have chosen for myself, though I had never described my preferences to him. He had simply paid attention to details that revealed my taste and personality, demonstrating the thoughtfulness that characterized his approach to everything important in his life. Standing in that hotel suite, surrounded by my bridesmaids as they bustled around applying final touches to their makeup and adjusting the deep burgundy silk dresses we had selected together, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the love and support that surrounded me. My sister Emma was serving as my maid of honor, radiating joy as she helped coordinate the final preparations. My college roommate Sarah was documenting every moment with her professional camera equipment, determined to capture memories that would last a lifetime. And then there was Cassandra. Cassandra Walsh had been my best friend since we were 7 years old, bonding over shared love of books and elaborate imaginative games during long summer afternoons in my family's backyard. We had navigated the complexities of middle school together, survived the social pressures of high school, and maintained our friendship despite attending different colleges. She had been the natural choice for maid of honor, until a disagreement about wedding planning responsibilities had created tension between us during the engagement period. The conflict had centered around her increasing criticism of my wedding choices, and her apparent resentment about the financial resources my family was investing in the celebration. Cassandra came from a working-class background and had always been sensitive about economic differences between our families, but her comments during the planning process had become increasingly pointed and hurtful. She questioned whether I deserved such an elaborate wedding, suggested that Jonathan was marrying me for my family's wealth rather than genuine affection, and made several remarks about privileged women who took their advantages for granted. Despite these tensions, I had worked hard to preserve our friendship because our history meant everything to me. Cassandra had been present for every significant moment of my life, from childhood disappointments to academic achievements to career milestones. The idea of getting married without her standing beside me felt impossible, so I had swallowed my hurt feelings and focused on the love that had sustained our friendship for over 2 decades. That morning, Cassandra arrived at the hotel suite 30 minutes later than planned, carrying a coffee cup with an expression that seemed oddly detached from the excitement filling the room. While the other bridesmaids chatted enthusiastically about the ceremony and reception details, she remained quiet and somewhat distant. I attributed her mood to pre-wedding nerves, assuming that she was simply feeling overwhelmed by the emotion of watching her oldest friend get married. The photography session proceeded smoothly, with our photographer capturing beautiful images of the bridal party against the backdrop of the hotel's elegant interior design. Cassandra smiled appropriately for the camera and participated in the traditional poses, but I noticed that her enthusiasm seemed forced rather than genuine. When I mentioned my observation to Emma, she dismissed my concerns, suggesting that some people simply felt uncomfortable being the center of attention during formal photography. As the ceremony time approached, we moved to the bridal suite's balcony for final preparations and a toast with champagne that my father had selected specially for the occasion. The view overlooked the Hudson River and the carefully arranged ceremony space below, where guests were beginning to take their seats among the white chairs adorned with silk ribbons and fresh flowers. The string quartet was warming up, filling the air with gentle melodies that created the perfect atmosphere for the most important day of my life. Emma raised her glass to offer a toast to friendship, love, and the beautiful future that Jonathan and I were beginning together. The other bridesmaids joined in with heartfelt words about happiness, partnership, and the joy of witnessing true love. When the moment came for Cassandra to speak, she stood slowly and looked directly at me with an expression I had never seen before. "Victoria," she began, her voice carrying an edge that made everyone in the room uncomfortable, "I have something important to tell you before you walk down that aisle." The tone of her statement created immediate tension among the group. Emma's smile faded as she recognized that something was wrong. Sarah lowered her camera, sensing that this was not a moment to be documented. The cheerful energy that had filled the suite suddenly shifted to concern and confusion. "Cassandra, what's going on?" I asked, setting down my champagne glass as anxiety began to build in my chest. She reached into her purse and pulled out her smartphone, tapping the screen several times before turning it toward me. "I think you need to see this before you make the biggest mistake of your life." The screen displayed a series of text messages between Jonathan and someone named Rebecca, with timestamps from the previous evening. As I read the messages, my heart began to race and my hands started to tremble. The conversation was intimate, romantic, and completely inconsistent with the character of the man I was about to marry. "Where did you get this?" I whispered, trying to process what I was seeing while maintaining some hope that there was an innocent explanation. "Jonathan sent these to my cousin Rebecca last night," Cassandra replied, her voice becoming stronger and more confident. "She thought you should know what kind of man you're really marrying." The messages suggested that Jonathan had been conducting an affair with Rebecca for several months, expressing regret about the upcoming wedding and describing it as an obligation he felt trapped by family expectations to fulfill. The final message, sent at 11:47 p.m. the previous evening, included explicit content that left no room for misinterpretation about the nature of their relationship. Emma immediately moved to my side, taking the phone to examine the messages more closely. "Victoria, we need to verify this before jumping to conclusions. This doesn't sound like Jonathan at all." But Cassandra was not finished. She pulled out a tablet device and showed me additional evidence that she claimed supported the affair allegations: screenshots of social media interactions, photographs of Jonathan and Rebecca together at locations I did not recognize, and email correspondence that painted a picture of deception that had been ongoing throughout our engagement period. "I've been investigating this for weeks," Cassandra explained, her voice now carrying a tone of satisfaction that made my stomach turn. "I hired a private investigator because I suspected something was wrong. I couldn't let you walk into a marriage with someone who doesn't really love you." The room erupted in chaos as my bridesmaids tried to process this information and determine the appropriate response. Emma demanded to know why Cassandra had waited until the wedding day to reveal such serious allegations. Sarah questioned the authenticity of the evidence and suggested that we needed to speak with Jonathan directly before making any decisions. The other bridesmaids stood in shocked silence, unsure how to respond to a situation that none of us had ever imagined. I felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. The man I had planned to spend my life with, who had demonstrated nothing but love and commitment throughout our relationship, was being accused of the worst possible betrayal on what should have been the happiest day of our lives. Everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and human character was being challenged by evidence that seemed impossible to dismiss. Through the suite's windows, I could see that the ceremony space was filling with guests who had traveled from across the country to celebrate our marriage. My parents had invested over $100,000 in this wedding, viewing it as a celebration of love and the beginning of a new family legacy. Jonathan's family had flown in from California, including his elderly grandparents who had made the cross-country journey despite health challenges. "What am I supposed to do?" I asked, looking around the room at faces that reflected my own confusion and distress. Emma took charge of the situation with the decisive leadership that had always characterized her personality. "We're going to get answers before making any decisions. Sarah, go find Jonathan and bring him here immediately. Don't tell him what this is about, just say that Victoria needs to speak with him urgently." As Sarah left to locate Jonathan, I sank into the antique chair by the window, still wearing my wedding dress but feeling as though my entire world was collapsing. The cathedral veil that had been worn by 3 generations of sterling women now felt like a burden rather than a blessing, a symbol of dreams and expectations that might all be based on lies. Cassandra remained standing near the center of the room, holding her devices and watching my reaction with an expression that was difficult to interpret. There was concern in her eyes, but also something else that made me uncomfortable. She seemed almost pleased by the chaos she had created, as though this moment was somehow satisfying for her. "How long have you known about this?" I asked her, trying to understand the timeline of events that had led to this revelation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I started suspecting something about 6 weeks ago," she replied. "You seemed different after Jonathan returned from that business trip to Chicago, and when I mentioned it to Rebecca, she told me they had spent time together that weekend." The Chicago business trip had been a legitimate work commitment that Jonathan had discussed with me in detail before traveling. He had called me every evening from his hotel, shared stories about his client meetings, and brought me back a small gift from a bookstore he had discovered near his office. The idea that he had been with another woman during that time seemed impossible to reconcile with the conversations we had shared. Emma's phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. She found Jonathan in the groom's suite. "She's bringing him here now." The 10 minutes that followed felt like hours as we waited for Sarah to return with my fiancé. I tried to prepare myself for a conversation that would either resolve this misunderstanding or end my engagement in front of 200 wedding guests. The emotional whiplash was overwhelming, shifting between hope that this was all a terrible mistake and terror that my entire future was about to be destroyed. When Sarah returned with Jonathan, his face immediately reflected concern about my obvious distress. He was impeccably dressed in his custom tuxedo, with a boutonniere of white roses that matched my bridal bouquet. His expression was that of a man who was confused by the urgency, but ready to address whatever crisis required his attention. "Victoria, what's wrong? Are you feeling sick? Do we need to delay the ceremony?" Emma handed him Cassandra's phone without explanation, simply saying, "Look at this and tell us what we're seeing." Jonathan's face transformed as he read the messages, moving from confusion to shock to what appeared to be genuine bewilderment. He scrolled through the conversation multiple times, examining every detail with the analytical attention he applied to complex business problems. "This isn't me," he said finally, looking up at the room full of women waiting for his explanation. "I've never sent these messages. I don't know anyone named Rebecca in Chicago, and I have never cheated on Victoria or anyone else in my entire life." Professional colleagues had been briefed about the situation and potential outcomes, ensuring that firm relationships could be maintained regardless of family reaction or community response to the truth-telling process. Client relationships had been assessed for potential impact, with contingency communication prepared if business implications emerged from the corrective effort. Family relationship management required particularly delicate preparation, given my mother's declining cognitive function and emotional attachment to Michael. Elena would need support and explanation following the retirement party, regardless of how the corrective process was received by other attendees or community members. The 5th critical step involved final preparation of supporting documentation, that would be referenced during the speech and made available for subsequent verification if questions arose about specific claims or timeline details. Academic transcripts, professional evaluations, and client testimonials had been organized for easy access while maintaining appropriate confidentiality standards. Medical records from the period following my father's death would provide objective evidence about our family's actual circumstances and my emotional resilience during that difficult transition. Psychological evaluations completed by school counselors had documented strong coping mechanisms that contradicted claims about dysfunction, requiring external intervention. Professional development documentation would demonstrate how legal expertise had been acquired through systematic education and training rather than family guidance, supporting accurate understanding of capability sources and achievement timeline. Bar examination results, law school honors, and firm evaluations would provide comprehensive evidence of independent professional development. Client satisfaction surveys and business development records would offer market-based validation of professional competence that existed independently of personal background or family circumstances. These materials would demonstrate that legal reputation was grounded in demonstrated results, rather than inspiring biographical narratives. The sixth essential step involved psychological preparation for the emotional impact of public confrontation with family narratives that had shaped my self-perception for over 2 decades. The corrective process would require maintaining professional composure while challenging established beliefs and comfortable assumptions that had influenced important relationships. Therapeutic consultation had provided strategies for managing anxiety and maintaining focus during potentially confrontational moments, ensuring that emotional reactions would not undermine strategic communication or professional credibility. The preparation emphasized confidence building through evidence review and alliance coordination. Practice sessions with trusted colleagues had tested delivery approaches and content organization, revealing areas where emotional investment might affect strategic messaging. The rehearsal process had identified optimal balance between passionate conviction and professional presentation that would serve truth-telling objectives. Mental preparation included accepting that some relationships might be permanently altered by truth-telling that challenged fundamental assumptions about family dynamics and individual achievements. The potential consequences had been considered and accepted as necessary cost of authentic self-representation and professional integrity. The implementation phase was proceeding according to strategic timeline, with each element coordinated to support comprehensive corrective effort that would establish accurate understanding of my background and achievements while maintaining respect for legitimate relationships and professional connections. The retirement party would mark culmination of systematic preparation and beginning of transformed approach to authentic representation in all professional and personal contexts. The 10-day countdown had begun, with daily progress toward truth-telling opportunity that would reclaim narrative control and establish foundation for future relationships based on accuracy rather than comfortable fiction. The first steps had been taken with confidence that comprehensive preparation would enable effective correction of misconceptions that had influenced recognition systems and community understanding for over 2 decades. The carefully orchestrated plan I had developed over weeks of intensive preparation encountered its first major obstacle 6 days before the retirement celebration, when my mother's health deteriorated unexpectedly and required emergency hospitalization. The wedding proceeded 2 hours behind schedule, after we had informed the guests about a minor emergency that had required resolution. Most people assumed that typical wedding day logistics had caused the delay, never imagining the drama that had unfolded in the bridal suite. Jonathan and I exchanged vows with even greater emotion than we had anticipated, knowing that our commitment to each other had already been tested and proven strong. But the damage that Cassandra had inflicted extended far beyond the delayed ceremony. Her betrayal had shattered my ability to trust, created doubt about my own judgment regarding people's character, and left me questioning whether other relationships in my life were based on genuine affection or hidden resentment. In the months that followed, I learned that Cassandra had been spreading rumors about my marriage and my family for weeks before the wedding, telling mutual friends that I was spoiled, privileged, and undeserving of happiness. She had attempted to recruit other people to support her campaign of sabotage, though most had refused to participate in her schemes. The revelation that someone I had loved as a sister could harbor such deep resentment and act with such calculated cruelty changed my understanding of human nature and my approach to relationships. I became more guarded, more analytical about people's motivations, and less willing to share my vulnerabilities with others. Yet, as devastating as Cassandra's betrayal had been, it also taught me valuable lessons about resilience, discernment, and the importance of surrounding myself with people who celebrated my success rather than resenting it. The experience forced me to develop stronger boundaries, better judgment, and a more sophisticated understanding of the complexities that can exist within seemingly close relationships. What I could never have imagined as I stood in that hotel suite 5 years ago was that this catastrophic betrayal would eventually become the foundation for the most important transformation of my life. The pain that Cassandra inflicted would ultimately teach me about forgiveness, redemption, and the possibility that even our greatest enemies can become unlikely catalysts for our greatest growth. But that understanding was still years away. On June 15, 2019, all I knew was that my best friend had tried to destroy my happiness, and I never wanted to see her again. The universe, it seemed, had other plans. The honeymoon in Tuscany should have been the perfect beginning to married life. But Cassandra's betrayal had created an invisible wound that colored every moment of what should have been pure joy. Jonathan and I wandered through vineyards and ancient villages, sampling world-class wines and dining at restaurants that had been serving families for generations. Yet I found myself constantly analyzing the motivations of everyone we encountered. The trust that had once come naturally to me had been replaced by a hypervigilance that exhausted me emotionally, while providing no real protection against future disappointment. Jonathan noticed my withdrawal during our second week in Italy. We were sitting on the terrace of our hotel, overlooking the rolling hills of Chianti, sharing a bottle of wine as the sunset painted the landscape in shades of gold and crimson. The scene was breathtakingly romantic, yet I felt disconnected from the beauty surrounding us, trapped in mental replays of Cassandra's confession and the realization that someone I had loved completely had harbored such devastating resentment. "Victoria, we need to talk about what happened," Jonathan said gently, setting down his wine glass and taking my hand. "I can see that you are still processing Cassandra's betrayal, and I want to help you work through this rather than letting it poison our marriage before we have really begun." His words were spoken with the same thoughtful consideration that had characterized our entire relationship, but they forced me to confront feelings I had been trying to suppress since our wedding day. The embarrassment of being so completely deceived by someone I had known for over 2 decades. The anger about having my judgment questioned and my happiness threatened. The fear that other people in my life might be hiding similar resentments behind masks of friendship and support. "I keep thinking about all the times she seemed genuinely happy for me," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "When I got into Columbia Business School, when we got engaged, when I received my promotion at the consulting firm. She celebrated with me, sent congratulatory cards, helped me plan celebration dinners. How could someone fake that level of support for so many years?" Jonathan was quiet for several minutes, considering my question with the analytical approach he applied to complex problems in his professional life. "I think the emotions were probably real in the moment," he said finally. "People are capable of holding contradictory feelings simultaneously. She likely did feel happy for your successes while also resenting them. The problem was that she never dealt with the resentment honestly, allowing it to grow until it overwhelmed the genuine affection." This insight began a period of deep reflection that would transform my understanding of human psychology and interpersonal relationships. Over the following weeks, I found myself analyzing past interactions with Cassandra through a new lens, identifying subtle signs of resentment that I had previously overlooked or misinterpreted. The slight edge in her voice when discussing my family's financial resources. The way she sometimes changed the subject when I shared professional achievements. The frequency with which she reminded me of mistakes I had made or challenges I had faced. The recognition was painful because it revealed how thoroughly I had prioritized maintaining harmony over addressing underlying tensions. I had sensed Cassandra's discomfort with certain aspects of my life, but had chosen to ignore these signals rather than risk confronting problems that might threaten our friendship. This avoidance had allowed resentments to fester until they became toxic enough to motivate deliberate sabotage. The realization forced me to examine other relationships in my life with similar scrutiny. Were there other people who smiled to my face while harboring secret resentments? Had I been naive about human nature in general, Or was Cassandra's behavior an isolated incident that reflected her individual character, rather than broader patterns? This analytical process initially increased my anxiety and suspicion, but it also began to develop skills that would prove invaluable in both personal and professional contexts. I learned to read subtle social cues that revealed people's true feelings about situations and relationships. I developed better boundaries around sharing personal information with people who had not demonstrated genuine trustworthiness. Most importantly, I began to understand the difference between surface-level pleasantries and authentic emotional connection. The transformation was accelerated by a conversation with my sister Emma during a weekend visit to our family home in Connecticut. Emma had always possessed exceptional emotional intelligence and social awareness that complemented my more analytical approach to relationships. She had observed the dynamics between Cassandra and me over many years, and had occasionally expressed concerns that I had dismissed as sisterly overprotectiveness. "I hate to say this because I know how much pain you are experiencing," Emma told me as we walked through the gardens where Cassandra and I had played as children. "But I am not entirely surprised by what happened at your wedding. Cassandra has always had complicated feelings about our family's advantages, and those feelings seemed to intensify as we all moved into adulthood." Emma's observation prompted me to reconsider years of interactions that I had interpreted as normal friendship dynamics. The way Cassandra sometimes seemed uncomfortable during family gatherings, particularly when my parents discussed business opportunities or vacation plans. Her tendency to make jokes about privilege and wealth that carried undertones of criticism and resentment. The frequency with which she reminded me that not everyone had access to the resources and opportunities that I often took for granted. "Why did you never say anything more directly?" I asked Emma, genuinely curious about her perspective on these dynamics. "Because I knew you valued loyalty above almost everything else, and criticizing Cassandra would have felt like asking you to choose between your sister and your best friend," Emma replied. "I hoped that either she would work through her issues or you would recognize the problems before they became destructive. I never imagined she would go as far as sabotaging your wedding." This conversation helped me understand that my loyalty to Cassandra, while admirable in its constancy, had prevented me from addressing relationship problems that might have been resolved through honest communication. I had prioritized harmony over authenticity, allowing dysfunction to persist, rather than risking temporary conflict that could have led to genuine resolution. The insight prompted me to examine my approach to conflict resolution and difficult conversations in all areas of my life. I realized that I had a pattern of avoiding confrontation, even when direct communication might prevent larger problems from developing. This tendency had served me well in some contexts, helping me maintain relationships and professional partnerships through challenging periods. But it had also enabled people to take advantage of my reluctance to establish firm boundaries. My professional life provided additional opportunities to apply these emerging insights about human psychology and interpersonal dynamics. As a senior consultant at Morrison Strategic Solutions, I worked with executive teams who were often dealing with similar challenges around trust, communication, and hidden conflicts that threatened organizational effectiveness. The skills I was developing through processing Cassandra's betrayal began to enhance my ability to identify and address these issues in corporate environments. One particular client engagement involved a technology startup where the founding partners had been friends since college, but were experiencing increasing tension as their company scaled rapidly. The surface-level conflicts centered around strategic decisions and resource allocation, but my analysis revealed deeper issues related to changing roles, external recognition, and financial equity that mirrored some of the dynamics I had experienced with Cassandra. Rather than simply addressing the strategic disagreements, I helped the founders explore the underlying emotional and psychological factors that were driving their conflicts. The process required them to acknowledge resentments and insecurities that they had been avoiding, but it ultimately strengthened their partnership and improved their company's performance. More importantly for my own development, it demonstrated that the painful lessons I was learning from personal betrayal could be transformed into professional capabilities that created value for others. The success of this engagement led to additional opportunities to work with organizations facing complex interpersonal challenges. I developed expertise in facilitating difficult conversations, identifying hidden agendas, and creating frameworks for addressing conflicts before they became destructive. These skills distinguished me from other consultants who focused primarily on technical or strategic issues, while overlooking the human dynamics that often determined whether solutions would be successfully implemented. My growing reputation for handling sensitive organizational issues attracted the attention of Margaret Chen, a senior partner at Morrison, who specialized in crisis management and organizational transformation. Margaret had built her career by helping companies navigate scandals, leadership transitions, and other challenging situations that required both strategic thinking and exceptional interpersonal skills. Victoria, I have been watching your work with the technology startup and several other clients who had complex relationship dynamics, Margaret told me during a private meeting in her corner office overlooking Manhattan. You have developed an unusual combination of analytical capability and emotional intelligence that could be extremely valuable in our crisis management practice. Margaret's offer to mentor me in crisis management represented an opportunity to channel my personal experiences into a specialized professional focus that aligned with my emerging strengths. Crisis management required the ability to remain calm under pressure, analyze complex situations quickly, identify key stakeholders and their motivations, and develop strategies that addressed both practical and emotional considerations. The role also required a high level of personal resilience and the ability to help others navigate difficult situations without becoming emotionally overwhelmed. My experience processing Cassandra's betrayal had forced me to develop exactly these capabilities, transforming what felt like a devastating personal setback into preparation for a challenging but rewarding career specialty. Under Margaret's guidance, I began working on increasingly complex engagements that tested my ability to understand human psychology under stress and develop solutions that accounted for both rational and emotional factors. Corporate scandals, executive misconduct, competitive attacks, regulatory investigations, and internal conflicts all required similar skills in analyzing stakeholder motivations, predicting behavioral responses, and crafting communication strategies that could rebuild trust and credibility. The work was demanding and often emotionally draining, but it provided a sense of purpose that transformed my understanding of professional fulfillment. Rather than simply helping companies optimize their operations or increase their profitability, I was helping people navigate some of the most difficult challenges they would ever face. The empathy I had developed through my own experiences with betrayal and loss enabled me to connect with clients who were struggling with similar feelings of vulnerability and uncertainty. The transformation in my professional identity was accompanied by changes in my personal relationships and social connections. I became more selective about the people I invested time and energy in, focusing on individuals who demonstrated consistent integrity and genuine supportiveness, rather than maintaining relationships based primarily on history or convenience. This shift initially felt isolating because it meant ending or reducing contact with several people who had been part of my social circle for years. However, it also created space for deeper connections with people who shared my values and could support my continued growth. The quality of my relationships improved significantly, even as the quantity decreased, leading to greater satisfaction and emotional security. Jonathan observed these changes with admiration and support, recognizing that my growth was strengthening our marriage rather than creating distance between us. "You are becoming more yourself," he told me one evening as we discussed the day's events over dinner. "More confident, more discerning, more willing to trust your own judgment about people and situations." His observation helped me understand that Cassandra's betrayal, while devastating in the moment, had forced me to develop capabilities that were making me more effective both personally and professionally. The pain had been real and significant, but it had also catalyzed growth that might not have occurred under more comfortable circumstances. The recognition that adversity could serve as a catalyst for positive transformation began to reshape my understanding of success and personal development. Rather than viewing challenges as obstacles to be avoided or minimized, I started to see them as opportunities to develop resilience, insight, and capabilities that could not be acquired through easier experiences. This perspective would prove essential as I continued to build my career in crisis management and developed expertise in helping others navigate their own difficult transitions. The empathy and understanding I could offer clients who were facing betrayal, disappointment, or professional setbacks was authentic because I had experienced similar challenges and emerged stronger from the process. The woman who walked down the aisle on June 15, 2019, had been trusting, optimistic, and perhaps somewhat naive about the complexities of human motivation. The woman who emerged from processing that betrayal was more discerning, more resilient, and more capable of helping others navigate similar challenges. The transformation was painful but ultimately invaluable, laying the foundation for everything that would follow in the years ahead. As I reflected on this journey during quiet moments with Jonathan, I began to understand that Cassandra's betrayal had been a gift disguised as a catastrophe. It had forced me to develop strength I did not know I possessed, and capabilities that would serve me for the rest of my life. The recognition was both humbling and empowering, setting the stage for the next phase of my personal and professional evolution. The systematic development of expertise in crisis management and organizational psychology required disciplined learning that extended far beyond my formal business education at Columbia. While my MBA had provided foundational knowledge in strategic planning and analytical frameworks, the specialized skills needed to guide individuals and organizations through complex interpersonal challenges demanded a different type of education altogether. This learning process began during my second year at Morrison Strategic Solutions and continued through intensive study, practical application, and mentorship under Margaret Chen's guidance. Margaret's approach to professional development emphasized the integration of academic research with real-world experience, creating a comprehensive understanding of how theoretical principles applied to actual crisis situations. She assigned me a reading list that included seminal works in psychology, organizational behavior, conflict resolution, and crisis communication. The bibliography spanned disciplines from cognitive behavioral therapy to hostage negotiation tactics, reflecting the diverse knowledge base required to address the full spectrum of challenges that organizations faced during periods of significant stress. The foundational text that most profoundly influenced my thinking was Getting to Yes by Roger Fisher and William Ury, which introduced principled negotiation techniques that separated people from problems and focused on mutual interests rather than opposing positions. The methodology resonated with my experiences processing Cassandra's betrayal, where understanding the underlying motivations behind destructive behavior had been essential to moving beyond anger toward genuine insight and eventual healing. I supplemented this core reading with specialized coursework through Harvard Business School's executive education programs, attending intensive workshops on crisis leadership, stakeholder management, and organizational change during complex transitions. These programs provided exposure to case studies from major corporate scandals, political crises, and social movements that had successfully navigated public scrutiny and internal dysfunction. The Harvard coursework introduced me to the concept of systems thinking in crisis management, which emphasized understanding the interconnected relationships between various stakeholders, rather than addressing isolated problems in sequence. This approach proved particularly valuable when working with organizations where surface-level conflicts reflected deeper structural issues that required comprehensive solutions rather than tactical fixes. One particularly influential seminar focused on the psychology of betrayal in professional environments, examining how broken trust affected team dynamics, decision-making processes, and organizational culture. The research presented during this session validated many of the insights I had developed through personal experience, while providing frameworks for helping others navigate similar challenges more effectively. Dr. Patricia Williamson, the seminar leader, had spent 15 years studying workplace betrayal and its impact on individual and organizational performance. Her research demonstrated that employees who experienced significant betrayal at work often developed enhanced analytical capabilities and improved judgment about interpersonal relationships, provided they received appropriate support during the recovery process. Betrayal is essentially a masterclass in human psychology, Dr. Williamson explained during one particularly memorable session. Individuals who process these experiences thoughtfully often emerge with sophisticated understanding of motivation, deception, and authentic relationship dynamics that serves them exceptionally well in leadership roles. This perspective reframed my experience with Cassandra as an inadvertent but valuable component of my professional education. The painful process of analyzing her motivations, recognizing warning signs I had previously missed, and developing better judgment about trustworthiness had created capabilities that distinguished me from colleagues who had never faced similar challenges. Dr. Williamson's research also emphasized the importance of transforming personal pain into professional purpose as a mechanism for achieving genuine healing and preventing cynicism from undermining future relationships. This insight guided my approach to client work, where I could offer authentic empathy to individuals facing betrayal while maintaining the emotional boundaries necessary for effective consultation. My education in crisis management was further enhanced through participation in simulation exercises designed to replicate high-pressure decision-making environments. These intensive workshops, conducted by former military officers and diplomatic negotiators, tested participants' ability to analyze complex situations quickly, identify key stakeholders and their motivations, and develop strategic responses under severe time constraints. The simulation exercises were particularly valuable because they forced me to apply theoretical knowledge in dynamic situations, where initial assumptions often proved incorrect, and strategies required constant adjustment based on new information. The experience developed confidence in my ability to remain calm and analytical during chaotic situations, while building trust with people who were experiencing high levels of stress and uncertainty. One simulation involved a fictional technology company facing a data breach that had exposed customer information while revealing internal fraud by senior executives. Participants were assigned various stakeholder roles and required to develop comprehensive response strategies that addressed legal, financial, operational, and reputational considerations simultaneously. My performance in this exercise demonstrated the practical value of the analytical skills I had developed through processing personal betrayal. While other participants became overwhelmed by the emotional complexity of managing multiple constituencies with conflicting interests, I was able to maintain focus on underlying patterns and systematic solutions that addressed root causes rather than symptoms. The simulation facilitator, Colonel Robert Martinez, provided feedback that proved instrumental in building my confidence as a crisis management specialist. Victoria, you have an unusual ability to see through surface-level conflicts, to identify the fundamental issues that need to be resolved, he told me during the debrief session. That skill is extremely rare and exceptionally valuable in this field. Colonel Martinez's observation encouraged me to pursue additional training in investigative techniques and forensic analysis that would enhance my ability to uncover hidden agendas and concealed motivations during organizational crises. This specialized education included coursework in interview techniques, document analysis, and behavioral assessment that complemented my existing analytical capabilities. The investigative training proved particularly valuable when working with clients who were dealing with internal conflicts where key information was being withheld or misrepresented by various parties. The ability to identify inconsistencies, ask strategic questions, and piece together accurate narratives from fragmentary evidence became central to my effectiveness as a crisis consultant. Margaret Chen observed my progress through these various educational initiatives, with growing confidence in my potential to handle the most complex client engagements. During our quarterly review meeting in her office, she outlined a professional development path that would position me for partnership consideration within 5 years. Victoria, your combination of analytical ability, emotional intelligence, and specialized training is creating a unique professional profile that our clients find extremely valuable, Margaret explained. The next phase of your development should focus on building your personal brand and establishing thought leadership in crisis management. Margaret's guidance led me to begin writing articles for industry publications about crisis management best practices, with particular emphasis on addressing the human dynamics that often determined whether technical solutions would be successfully implemented. These publications provided platforms for sharing insights derived from both academic research and practical experience, while building recognition within the professional community. My first major article, Beyond Damage Control: Transforming Organizational Crisis into Competitive Advantage, was published in Harvard Business Review and generated significant attention from both corporate executives and academic researchers. The piece argued that organizations facing serious challenges could emerge stronger than before if they used crisis situations as opportunities to address underlying structural problems and build more resilient operational systems. The article drew heavily on my personal experience with betrayal and recovery, while translating those insights into actionable frameworks that organizations could implement during their own difficult transitions. The response from readers validated my approach of combining personal authenticity with professional expertise to create more compelling and effective consultation services. The success of this publication led to speaking opportunities at industry conferences, where I could share insights about crisis management with broader audiences. These presentations required me to synthesize complex research findings into accessible frameworks while maintaining the credibility necessary to influence senior executives who were facing their own organizational challenges. My presentation at the National Association of Corporate Directors annual conference focused on board leadership during trust crises, addressing how governance structures could be adapted to provide effective oversight when organizations were dealing with scandals or internal conflicts that threatened stakeholder confidence. The presentation emphasized the importance of transparency, accountability, and systematic communication during crisis periods, while acknowledging the emotional and psychological factors that often influence decision-making under pressure. The response from conference attendees demonstrated strong interest in approaches that addressed both technical and human considerations, rather than treating crisis management as purely a procedural exercise. These speaking engagements led to consulting opportunities with organizations facing complex challenges that required the specialized expertise I had developed. One particularly significant engagement involved a prestigious law firm, where allegations of discrimination and harassment had created deep divisions within the partnership, while threatening the firm's reputation and client relationships. The law firm engagement required me to navigate extremely sensitive personal and professional dynamics, while helping the organization rebuild trust and implement sustainable improvements to their culture and management systems. The work drew heavily on my education in conflict resolution, organizational psychology, and crisis communication, while testing my ability to maintain objectivity and effectiveness in an emotionally charged environment. The successful resolution of this engagement resulted in measurable improvements to the firm's internal culture and external reputation, while providing a compelling case study for my continued professional development. More importantly, the experience demonstrated that my specialized education and training could create significant value for organizations facing their most difficult challenges. The combination of formal education, practical experience, and thought leadership development was transforming my professional identity, from a general management consultant to a recognized specialist in crisis management and organizational transformation. This evolution created opportunities for more challenging and rewarding client work while building the foundation for eventual partnership at Morrison Strategic Solutions. My personal education in human psychology and relationship dynamics was paralleling my professional development, as I continued to apply insights from my experience with Cassandra to better understand motivation, authenticity, and trust in all areas of my life. The analytical frameworks I was learning through crisis management training proved equally valuable for navigating personal relationships and making better decisions about which people deserved my time and emotional investment. Jonathan observed these changes with admiration and support, recognizing that my professional growth was enhancing our marriage rather than creating distance between us. "You are becoming more discerning about everything," he told me during one of our evening conversations about the day's events. "More confident in your judgment, more effective at reading people, more capable of helping others solve their problems." His observation highlighted the interconnected nature of personal and professional development, where skills developed in one context enhanced effectiveness in others. The education I was pursuing to advance my career was simultaneously making me a better spouse, friend, and family member by improving my understanding of human behavior and relationship dynamics. The educational phase of my transformation was also accompanied by increased financial compensation and professional recognition that provided security and opportunities for Jonathan and me to build the life we had envisioned together. My salary increases enabled us to purchase a home in Westchester County, travel to destinations we had dreamed about during business school, and begin saving for the family we hope to start in the coming years. The combination of professional fulfillment and personal stability created a foundation for continued growth that would prove essential as my career continued to evolve. The education I had pursued with such discipline and determination was producing tangible results that validated the investment of time and energy, while positioning me for even greater opportunities in the future. As I reflected on this period of intensive learning and development, I understood that the education phase of my transformation was preparing me for challenges and opportunities that I could not yet imagine. The knowledge and skills I was acquiring would prove essential when facing the ultimate test of my personal and professional growth 5 years later, when Cassandra would re-enter my life under circumstances that neither of us could have predicted. The development of a sophisticated professional network requires strategic thinking, authentic relationship building, and the discipline to invest in others before seeking personal benefit. My approach to networking evolved significantly during my third year at Morrison Strategic Solutions, as I recognized that sustainable career advancement would depend not only on technical expertise, but also on meaningful connections with influential professionals who could provide opportunities, guidance, and collaborative partnerships. The foundation of my networking strategy centered on value creation rather than transactional relationship building. Rather than attending events with the primary goal of collecting business cards or securing immediate opportunities, I focused on identifying ways to contribute meaningfully to other professionals' objectives while building genuine connections based on shared interests and mutual respect. This approach was influenced by insights from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, which Margaret Chen had recommended as essential reading for anyone seeking to build influence within professional communities. Carnegie's emphasis on authentic interest in others and the principle of helping people achieve their goals resonated with my natural inclinations while providing practical frameworks for systematic relationship development. My first significant networking breakthrough occurred during a crisis management conference in Chicago, where I presented research findings about the correlation between organizational culture and crisis resilience. The presentation attracted attention from Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a prominent organizational psychologist who had authored several influential books about workplace dynamics and leadership development during challenging transitions. Dr. Rodriguez approached me after the presentation with genuine enthusiasm about my research methodology and the practical applications I had identified through client work. Rather than simply exchanging contact information and promising to connect later, she invited me to coffee the following morning to discuss potential collaboration opportunities that could benefit both of our professional objectives. During our conversation, Dr. Rodriguez explained that she was developing a comprehensive training program for corporate executives about leading organizations through complex crises. The program required practical case studies and real-world frameworks that could be implemented immediately, rather than theoretical concepts that might prove difficult to execute under pressure. Your research provides exactly the type of actionable insights that executives need, Dr. Rodriguez told me as we discussed the intersection between her academic research and my consulting experience. Would you be interested in collaborating on curriculum development that combines your practical frameworks with my psychological research? The collaboration opportunity represented a significant advancement in my professional visibility, while providing access to Dr. Rodriguez's extensive network of corporate leaders, academic researchers, and executive education professionals. More importantly, the partnership would enable me to contribute meaningfully to leadership development initiatives that could impact thousands of professionals facing similar challenges to those I had experienced personally. Over the following 6 months, Dr. Rodriguez and I developed an executive education program titled Leading Through Betrayal: Building Organizational Resilience in Trust Crises. The curriculum integrated psychological research about trust formation and repair with practical frameworks for crisis management that organizations could implement during periods of significant internal conflict or external scrutiny. The program development process required extensive collaboration with executives who had successfully navigated major organizational crises, providing opportunities to build relationships with senior leaders across multiple industries. These conversations revealed consistent patterns in how effective leaders approached trust crises, while demonstrating the value of combining emotional intelligence with systematic crisis management methodologies. One particularly influential connection emerged through this research process. David Kim, the Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Financial Services, had successfully led his organization through a complex crisis involving regulatory investigation, internal fraud, and significant media scrutiny that threatened the company's survival. His approach to crisis leadership exemplified the principles Dr. Rodriguez and I were incorporating into our educational curriculum. David agreed to serve as a case study subject for our program while also becoming a valuable mentor who provided insights about executive leadership that complemented my consulting perspective. His guidance proved instrumental in helping me understand how crisis management expertise could be leveraged to build broader leadership capabilities and executive presence. Victoria, your ability to analyze complex interpersonal dynamics while maintaining focus on strategic objectives is exactly what organizations need during their most difficult periods, David observed during one of our planning sessions. You should consider positioning yourself for chief executive roles rather than limiting your aspirations to consulting partnerships. David's suggestion represented a fundamental shift in how I conceptualized my career trajectory. While I had been focused on building expertise within the consulting industry, His perspective suggested that my specialized knowledge could be applied more broadly to general management roles that required sophisticated understanding of organizational dynamics and crisis leadership. This insight led me to expand my networking efforts beyond crisis management specialists to include senior executives, board members, and investors who were responsible for making leadership decisions during challenging organizational transitions. The expansion required developing new relationship-building strategies that could demonstrate value to individuals who had different professional priorities and decision-making criteria. My approach to building relationships with senior executives emphasized thought leadership and strategic insights, rather than technical consulting capabilities. I began writing more frequently for publications that reached chief executive officers and board members, focusing on topics that connected crisis management expertise with broader leadership challenges, such as organizational transformation, stakeholder management, and competitive positioning during market disruption. One article that generated significant executive attention was The Crisis Advantage: How Smart Leaders Use Disruption to Accelerate Growth, published in the McKinsey Quarterly. The piece argued that organizations facing significant challenges possessed unique opportunities to implement changes that would be impossible under normal circumstances, provided they had leadership teams capable of maintaining strategic focus while managing immediate crisis requirements. The article attracted responses from dozens of senior executives who were facing similar challenges within their own organizations. These conversations provided opportunities to build relationships while demonstrating the practical value of crisis management expertise for addressing broader strategic objectives. Margaret Chen observed my expanding network with approval, while also providing guidance about maintaining focus on objectives that would advance my long-term career goals, rather than pursuing relationships that might be interesting but strategically irrelevant. Victoria, you are building an impressive professional network, but remember that effective networking requires selectivity and intentionality, Margaret counseled during one of our mentoring sessions. Focus on relationships that align with your career aspirations and provide opportunities for mutual value creation. Margaret's guidance helped me develop more sophisticated criteria for evaluating networking opportunities and allocating time investments. Rather than attending every available professional event or accepting every meeting request, I began prioritizing relationships that offered genuine learning opportunities, collaborative potential, or access to decision-makers who could influence my career trajectory. This strategic approach led me to join the board of directors for the Metropolitan Crisis Management Institute, a nonprofit organization that provided crisis response training for smaller companies that could not afford comprehensive consulting services. The board position provided exposure to prominent business leaders, while enabling me to contribute meaningfully to an organization whose mission aligned with my professional values. Through the board service, I developed relationships with individuals who possessed diverse expertise in areas that complemented my crisis management specialization. These connections included technology entrepreneurs, financial services executives, healthcare administrators, and nonprofit leaders who offered different perspectives on leadership challenges while providing access to industries where my expertise could create significant value. One particularly valuable board colleague was Sarah Chen, the Chief Technology Officer of a rapidly growing fintech company that was revolutionizing small business lending through innovative data analytics and streamlined application processes. Sarah's combination of technical expertise and entrepreneurial vision provided insights about building companies during periods of rapid change and competitive pressure. Sarah and I discovered shared interests in organizational psychology and leadership development that extended beyond our board responsibilities. Our conversations about building high-performance teams during periods of rapid growth revealed opportunities for collaboration that could benefit both of our professional objectives. Victoria, we are planning to expand our executive team significantly over the next 18 months as we scale operations and enter new markets, Sarah explained during one of our coffee meetings after a board session. Your expertise in organizational dynamics and crisis management could be extremely valuable as we navigate the challenges of rapid growth. Sarah's company, Pinnacle Financial Technologies, represented exactly the type of innovative organization where my expertise could create substantial impact while providing exposure to entrepreneurial leadership and technology-driven business models. The opportunity to work with a high-growth company would complement my traditional consulting experience while building capabilities that could support future executive roles. My network expansion was also facilitated by participation in executive leadership programs that brought together high-potential professionals from various industries for intensive learning experiences. These programs provided concentrated opportunities to build relationships with individuals who possess similar career ambitions while developing leadership capabilities through exposure to diverse business challenges and problem-solving approaches. The most influential of these programs was the Harvard Business School Advanced Management Program, a comprehensive executive education experience that included participants who were being prepared for senior leadership roles within their respective organizations. The program's intensive format created opportunities for deep relationship building while providing exposure to cutting-edge business thinking and strategic frameworks. During the Harvard program, I connected with executives who were facing complex organizational challenges that required exactly the type of crisis management expertise I had developed. These relationships provided immediate consulting opportunities while also building long-term professional connections that would prove valuable throughout my career advancement. One particularly significant connection was Michael Torres, the president of global operations for a multinational consumer goods company that was dealing with supply chain disruptions, regulatory challenges, and internal conflicts that threatened operational effectiveness across multiple geographic markets. Michael's challenges required sophisticated understanding of cross-cultural communication, stakeholder management, and crisis coordination across diverse organizational structures. Our collaboration on addressing his company's challenges provided opportunities to apply my crisis management expertise in international contexts, while building experience with complex operational issues that extended beyond traditional interpersonal dynamics. The successful resolution of these challenges created a compelling case study for my professional capabilities, while establishing Michael as a valuable advocate within his extensive professional network. The systematic approach to network building was producing measurable results in terms of consulting opportunities, speaking engagements, and strategic partnerships that were accelerating my career advancement. More importantly, the relationships I was developing were providing access to learning opportunities and collaborative projects that were enhancing my expertise while building a reputation for delivering exceptional value to challenging organizational situations. The network I had constructed represented more than professional connections. These relationships had become sources of intellectual stimulation, career guidance, and personal support that enriched both my professional and personal life. The individuals I was connected with shared similar values about excellence, integrity, and the importance of using business success to create positive impact for others. As I reflected on the transformation in my professional relationships over the 3 years since my wedding, I recognized that the analytical skills I had developed through processing Cassandra's betrayal had enhanced my ability to build authentic connections with people who possessed genuine character and aligned values. The painful experience of being deceived by someone I trusted completely had taught me to recognize authenticity and integrity in others, while avoiding relationships that might be based on superficial compatibility rather than fundamental alignment. This enhanced discernment was proving invaluable in professional contexts where the ability to assess people's motivations and character could determine the success or failure of major initiatives. The network I was building consisted of individuals who had demonstrated consistent integrity and competence over time, creating a foundation of trust that could support ambitious collaborative projects and mutual advocacy. The transition from theoretical knowledge to practical implementation required courage, strategic planning, and the willingness to risk established security for the possibility of creating something entirely new. My opportunity to test my crisis management expertise in an entrepreneurial context emerged during my 4th year at Morrison Strategic Solutions, when Sarah Chen approached me with a proposition that would challenge everything I had learned about organizational leadership while providing the ultimate test of my professional capabilities. Sarah's fintech company, Pinnacle Financial Technologies, had achieved remarkable growth over its 3-year history, expanding from a 5-person startup to a 200-employee organization that was processing over $1 billion in small business loans annually. However, this rapid expansion had created internal tensions and operational challenges that threatened to undermine the company's continued success unless they were addressed through systematic organizational development. The immediate crisis centered around a whistleblower complaint filed by a former employee who alleged that Pinnacle's underwriting algorithms contained inherent biases that discriminated against minority-owned businesses and women entrepreneurs. The allegations had attracted attention from federal regulators, civil rights organizations, and investigative journalists who were examining whether the company's artificial intelligence systems perpetuated systemic discrimination in small business lending. The regulatory investigation threatened Pinnacle's operating licenses in several states, while generating negative media coverage that was damaging the company's reputation among customers, investors, and potential business partners. More significantly, the crisis had exposed deeper organizational issues related to diversity and inclusion, ethical oversight, and corporate governance that required comprehensive solutions rather than tactical damage control. Sarah invited me to join Pinnacle as Chief Operating Officer, with responsibility for resolving the immediate crisis while building organizational systems that could support sustainable growth and ethical operations. The role represented a dramatic career transition from consulting to executive leadership, requiring me to apply my specialized expertise within a single organization rather than across multiple client engagements. The opportunity was simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying, because it would test whether my crisis management theories could produce measurable results when I possessed direct authority and accountability for implementation. Success would validate my professional development while establishing credibility for future executive roles. Failure would damage my reputation and potentially end my aspirations for senior leadership positions. Margaret Chen supported my decision to accept Sarah's offer while providing realistic perspective about the challenges involved in transitioning from advisory roles to operational responsibility. Her guidance proved invaluable as I prepared for the complexity of managing multiple stakeholders, competing priorities, and resource constraints that characterized executive leadership during organizational crises. Victoria, your expertise in crisis management and organizational psychology provides excellent preparation for this role, but remember that implementation requires different skills than analysis, Margaret cautioned during our final mentoring session before my departure from Morrison. You will need to make decisions quickly with incomplete information, while maintaining team morale and stakeholder confidence throughout the process. My first 90 days at Pinnacle required immersion in the company's technology systems, business model, regulatory environment, and organizational culture, while simultaneously developing comprehensive strategies for addressing the discrimination allegations and implementing preventative measures that could restore stakeholder confidence. The investigation revealed that the whistleblower's core allegations were partially accurate. Pinnacle's underwriting algorithms had not been intentionally designed to discriminate, but they incorporated data sources and analytical frameworks that indirectly reflected historical biases in business lending practices. The artificial intelligence systems had learned to replicate patterns from traditional financial institutions that had systematically underserved minority entrepreneurs and women business owners. However, my analysis also revealed that these algorithmic biases had been identified by Pinnacle's internal audit team 6 months earlier, and the company had been developing corrective measures when the whistleblower complaint was filed. The former employee who had initiated the investigation had been terminated for performance issues rather than retaliation for reporting discrimination, though the timing had created appearance of impropriety that complicated the company's response. The situation required nuanced communication strategies that acknowledged legitimate concerns about algorithmic bias while providing accurate context about Pinnacle's corrective actions and commitment to ethical lending practices. The response needed to satisfy regulatory requirements, restore public confidence, and maintain employee morale during a period of intense scrutiny and uncertainty. My first major initiative involved engaging external experts in algorithmic auditing and bias detection to conduct comprehensive analysis of Pinnacle's underwriting systems and recommend specific improvements that could eliminate discriminatory patterns while maintaining competitive lending decisions. This approach demonstrated proactive commitment to addressing identified problems rather than minimizing their significance or delaying corrective action. The external audit confirmed the existence of subtle biases in Pinnacle's algorithms, while also validating the company's preliminary efforts to develop corrective measures. The auditors recommended comprehensive retraining of the artificial intelligence systems using more diverse data sources and implementing ongoing monitoring protocols that could detect emerging biases before they affected lending decisions. Implementation of these recommendations required significant technology investments and operational changes that tested Pinnacle's financial resources and organizational capacity during a period when regulatory uncertainty was making capital raising more difficult. The crisis management challenge involved balancing immediate compliance requirements with long-term strategic objectives, while maintaining stakeholder confidence throughout the remediation process. My approach emphasized transparency and stakeholder engagement rather than defensive communication strategies that might minimize short-term criticism but fail to build sustainable trust. I organized regular briefings for regulators, investors, and community advocates that provided detailed updates about corrective actions, while soliciting feedback about additional measures that could strengthen Pinnacle's commitment to ethical lending practices. The transparency strategy initially generated additional scrutiny and criticism, as external stakeholders identified aspects of Pinnacle's operations that required improvement. However, this feedback proved invaluable for developing comprehensive solutions that addressed root causes rather than superficial symptoms, while building relationships with community leaders who could serve as advocates for the company's transformation efforts. One particularly important relationship emerged with Dr. Angela Washington, the director of the Metropolitan Small Business Development Center, who had initially been critical of Pinnacle's lending practices but became a collaborative partner, as she observed the company's genuine commitment to implementing meaningful reforms. Dr. Washington's organization served minority entrepreneurs and women business owners, who represented exactly the demographic groups that Pinnacle's algorithms had inadvertently underserved. Her insights about the specific challenges these entrepreneurs faced when seeking capital proved invaluable for developing lending criteria that could identify creditworthy borrowers who might be overlooked by traditional underwriting approaches. Victoria, what impresses me about Pinnacle's response is that you are not simply trying to fix technical problems with your algorithms, Dr. Washington observed during one of our collaboration sessions. You are fundamentally rethinking how financial technology can serve underrepresented entrepreneurs more effectively. The collaboration with Dr. Washington's organization led to development of specialized lending programs that combined artificial intelligence analysis with human review processes, specifically designed to identify promising business opportunities among entrepreneurs who lacked traditional credit profiles or collateral assets. These programs required additional operational complexity, but generated strong portfolio performance while advancing Pinnacle's diversity and inclusion objectives. The success of these innovative lending approaches attracted positive attention from regulators, investors, and industry observers, who recognized that Pinnacle was pioneering solutions to persistent problems in small business finance, rather than simply addressing isolated compliance issues. The company's willingness to invest in comprehensive reforms during a crisis period demonstrated leadership that distinguished it from competitors who might have pursued minimum compliance strategies. The regulatory investigation concluded after 8 months with findings that acknowledged Pinnacle's proactive remediation efforts, while requiring ongoing monitoring and reporting to ensure sustained compliance with fair lending requirements. The resolution provided regulatory clarity that enabled resumed business development while establishing Pinnacle as a model for ethical artificial intelligence implementation in financial services. More importantly for my professional development, the successful crisis resolution demonstrated that my crisis management expertise could produce measurable results when applied with executive authority and adequate resources. The experience validated my transition from consulting to operational leadership, while building confidence for pursuing additional executive opportunities in the future. The Pinnacle experience also revealed capabilities I had not fully recognized during my consulting career. The ability to inspire teams during difficult periods, maintain strategic focus while managing competing demands, and build coalitions among diverse stakeholders proved to be natural extensions of the analytical and interpersonal skills I had developed through processing personal betrayal and professional education. Sarah Chen observed these emerging leadership capabilities with appreciation and provided feedback that proved instrumental in building my confidence as an executive. Victoria, your approach to this crisis has been exceptional because you maintained focus on long-term solutions rather than short-term damage control, she told me during our year-end review meeting. That strategic perspective is exactly what we need as we prepare for the next phase of growth. Sarah's feedback encouraged me to begin developing my own vision for how technology companies could integrate ethical considerations into their core business strategies, rather than treating social responsibility as an ancillary concern. This vision would eventually form the foundation for my own entrepreneurial ventures, though those opportunities were still several years in the future. The success at Pinnacle also generated external recognition that enhanced my professional reputation beyond crisis management specialization. Industry publications featured articles about Pinnacle's transformation that highlighted my leadership role, while speaking invitations provided platforms for sharing insights about integrating ethical considerations into technology development and business operations. One particularly significant recognition came from the National Association of Corporate Directors, which invited me to present a case study about Pinnacle's crisis response at their annual conference. The presentation attracted attention from board members and senior executives who were facing similar challenges related to artificial intelligence, algorithmic bias, and stakeholder engagement during technology transitions. The NACD presentation led to additional consulting opportunities with technology companies that were seeking guidance about proactive approaches to ethical artificial intelligence development. These engagements provided income supplementation while building expertise in emerging areas that would prove valuable for future career advancement. However, the most important outcome of the Pinnacle experience was personal confidence that I could lead organizations through complex challenges while maintaining integrity and achieving sustainable results. The crisis management theories I had studied extensively had proven effective when implemented with appropriate resources and stakeholder support, validating my professional development while providing foundation for greater leadership aspirations. The transformation from consultant to executive required adjustment to different decision-making responsibilities and accountability structures, but the fundamental skills I had developed through education and networking translated effectively to operational leadership contexts. The ability to analyze complex situations, understand stakeholder motivations, and develop systematic solutions remained central to effectiveness regardless of organizational role or industry context. As I reflected on the Pinnacle experience during quiet moments with Jonathan, I recognized that this first prototype of executive leadership had exceeded my expectations while revealing new possibilities for future career development. The success provided validation for pursuing additional executive opportunities while building confidence that I could create meaningful impact through business leadership rather than advisory consulting. The woman who had been devastated by personal betrayal 5 years earlier had developed into a business executive capable of leading organizations through complex crises while building coalitions among diverse stakeholders. The transformation was profound and would prove essential for the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead in the journey toward entrepreneurial success and eventual reunion with the person who had catalyzed this remarkable evolution. The ambition to launch my own consulting firm specializing in ethical business transformation required confronting the harsh realities of entrepreneurship while working within significant financial constraints that tested every creative problem-solving skill I had developed throughout my career. After 2 successful years as Chief Operating Officer at Pinnacle Financial Technologies, I had gained invaluable executive experience and built a compelling track record of leading organizations through complex ethical and regulatory challenges. However, transitioning from a secure executive salary to entrepreneurial uncertainty demanded careful financial planning and resourceful approaches to building a viable business without traditional venture capital or substantial personal savings. The decision to pursue entrepreneurship was influenced by growing recognition that my specialized expertise in crisis management and ethical business transformation represented a significant market opportunity that existing consulting firms were not adequately addressing. Large management consulting companies possessed sophisticated analytical capabilities, but often lacked the nuanced understanding of human psychology and organizational dynamics required to guide companies through trust crises and ethical challenges. Meanwhile, smaller boutique firms typically focused on specific technical areas without offering the comprehensive strategic perspective that complex organizational transformation required. The market gap represented a compelling business opportunity, but capitalizing on it would require developing service offerings, building client relationships, and establishing operational infrastructure without the substantial upfront investment that traditional consulting firm launches typically required. The resource constraints forced innovative approaches to every aspect of business development, while testing my ability to create value with minimal capital investment. My initial business plan outlined a phased approach to firm development that would minimize financial risk while building momentum through early client successes. The strategy emphasized leveraging existing professional relationships to secure initial engagements, while gradually expanding service capabilities and team composition, as revenue growth provided resources for additional investments. This approach required maintaining extremely disciplined financial management, while maximizing the impact of every dollar invested in business development. The first major resource challenge involved establishing professional credibility and market presence without substantial marketing budgets or prestigious office locations that potential clients might expect from management consultants. Traditional consulting firms invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in branding, office space, and marketing materials to project sophistication and expertise. My approach required demonstrating the same level of professionalism through alternative methods that emphasized intellectual capital and client results, rather than expensive infrastructure. The solution involved focusing intensively on thought leadership and content development that could establish expertise and attract client attention through valuable insights, rather than traditional advertising or business development approaches. I began writing extensively for industry publications, developing case studies that demonstrated successful crisis management approaches, and creating educational content that potential clients could implement immediately while recognizing the value of more comprehensive consulting support. One particularly effective content strategy involved developing a series of white papers that analyzed recent corporate crises and identified specific factors that distinguished successful organizational responses from failed attempts at damage control. These publications provided practical frameworks that executives could apply to their own challenges while demonstrating the sophisticated analytical approach that comprehensive consulting engagement would provide. The white paper series attracted significant attention from business leaders who were facing similar challenges within their own organizations. The publications generated numerous inquiry calls from executives who had read the analysis and recognized the relevance to their specific situations. These inquiries provided opportunities to convert intellectual property into consulting engagements without substantial business development expenses. However, converting initial interest into signed contracts required overcoming client concerns about working with a newly established firm that lacked the established reputation and extensive resources of major consulting companies. Potential clients appreciated the specialized expertise and innovative approaches I could offer, but they questioned whether a small firm could provide the comprehensive support and institutional stability that complex organizational transformation required. Addressing these concerns required developing creative partnership structures and service delivery models that could provide clients with confidence in project success while working within my resource limitations. One particularly effective approach involved establishing strategic alliances with specialized experts who could provide complementary capabilities on a project basis without requiring permanent staff additions that would strain the firm's financial resources. These partnership networks enabled me to offer comprehensive service capabilities that rivaled much larger consulting firms, while maintaining the flexibility and cost structure that characterized smaller organizations. The collaborative approach also provided valuable learning opportunities and professional development that enhanced my own capabilities while building relationships that could support future business expansion. My first major client engagement emerged through my professional network, when David Kim, the Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Financial Services, whom I had met during my crisis management research, contacted me about a sensitive situation involving allegations of discriminatory lending practices at one of Meridian's subsidiary companies. The subsidiary had been acquired 18 months earlier, and integration efforts had revealed operational practices that conflicted with Meridian's ethical standards and regulatory requirements. The engagement required comprehensive analysis of the subsidiary's lending algorithms, staff training programs, and quality control systems, while developing corrective action plans that could address regulatory concerns without disrupting ongoing business operations. The project complexity demanded extensive coordination with legal counsel, regulatory affairs specialists, and technology consultants, while maintaining absolute confidentiality throughout the investigation and remediation process. The resource challenge involved delivering sophisticated analytical work and strategic recommendations, while operating with minimal administrative support and limited technology infrastructure. Traditional consulting firms would have assigned teams of analysts and project managers to support this type of engagement, but my approach required developing efficient workflows and analytical processes that could produce comparable results with dramatically smaller resource investments. The solution involved leveraging technology platforms and analytical tools that could automate routine research and data analysis tasks, while focusing my personal time on the strategic thinking and client relationship management that created the greatest value. This approach required substantial upfront investment in learning new software applications and developing customized analytical frameworks, but it ultimately enabled delivery of high-quality results while maintaining competitive pricing that attracted additional client opportunities. The Meridian engagement was completed successfully within 6 months, resulting in comprehensive remediation of the subsidiary's discriminatory practices and implementation of monitoring systems that prevented similar problems from emerging in the future. More importantly for my business development, the project generated a compelling case study that demonstrated the effectiveness of my approach, while providing David Kim with measurable results that motivated him to recommend my services to other executives facing similar challenges. The successful completion of the Meridian project provided crucial validation of my business model, while generating revenue that enabled modest expansion of service capabilities and technology infrastructure. However, the irregular nature of consulting revenue required careful cash flow management and strategic planning to ensure that business expenses remained aligned with available resources during periods between major engagements. The financial uncertainty was particularly challenging because it contrasted sharply with the predictable compensation and comprehensive benefits that executive employment had provided. The transition required adjustment to variable income streams and responsibility for health insurance, retirement planning, and other benefits that had previously been provided by employers. These additional financial obligations had to be managed while investing in business development activities that would generate future revenue. Jonathan provided essential emotional and practical support during this challenging transition period, sharing responsibility for household expenses while I established the consulting firm and built a sustainable client base. His understanding and encouragement proved invaluable during periods when the financial stress of entrepreneurship created doubt about the viability of the business venture. Victoria, I believe completely in your ability to build something extraordinary. Jonathan reminded me during one particularly difficult period when several potential clients had delayed engagement decisions, creating temporary financial pressure. The expertise you have developed and the results you have achieved prove that there is significant demand for what you offer. We just need to be patient while the market recognizes the value. Jonathan's perspective helped maintain focus on long-term objectives rather than becoming overwhelmed by short-term financial concerns. His support also enabled me to decline potential engagements that offered immediate revenue but did not align with my strategic vision for building a specialized practice focused on ethical business transformation rather than general management consulting. The selective approach to client development proved essential for building a coherent brand identity and developing specialized expertise that could command premium pricing. Rather than accepting any available consulting project, I focused on engagements that involved ethical challenges, crisis management, or organizational transformation that aligned with my core competencies and strategic positioning. This disciplined approach to business development was validated when Dr. Angela Washington, whom I had worked with during the Pinnacle crisis, recommended my services to the board of directors of a major nonprofit organization that was facing allegations of financial mismanagement and governance failures. The nonprofit engagement represented an opportunity to apply my crisis management expertise in a different organizational context, while building experience with board governance and stakeholder management that would prove valuable for future client opportunities. The nonprofit project required developing innovative fee structures that acknowledge the organization's limited financial resources while ensuring adequate compensation for the extensive work required to restore stakeholder confidence and implement sustainable governance improvements. The solution involved a combination of reduced hourly rates and performance-based compensation that aligned my incentives with the organization's success while providing acceptable financial returns. The creative fee structure demonstrated flexibility and commitment to client success that distinguished my approach from larger consulting firms that typically required standard rate structures regardless of client circumstances. This adaptability became a significant competitive advantage when working with organizations that faced financial constraints or needed to demonstrate fiscal responsibility to stakeholders during crisis periods. The nonprofit engagement was completed successfully, resulting in complete restoration of stakeholder confidence and implementation of governance systems that strengthened the organization's operational effectiveness while ensuring ongoing compliance with regulatory requirements. The project generated another compelling case study while building expertise in nonprofit governance that expanded my potential client base beyond traditional corporate organizations. As my consulting practice grew and developed throughout the first 18 months of operation, I recognized that the resource constraints that had initially seemed like obstacles had actually forced innovation and efficiency that created sustainable competitive advantages. The necessity of delivering high-quality results with minimal overhead had led to development of analytical processes and service delivery methods that enabled competitive pricing while maintaining attractive profit margins. The lean operational approach also provided flexibility to adapt quickly to changing client needs and market conditions, without the institutional inertia that characterized larger consulting firms. This agility proved particularly valuable when working with organizations facing rapidly evolving crises that required immediate strategic adjustments and implementation support. The experience of building a successful consulting practice despite significant resource constraints provided confidence that entrepreneurial challenges could be overcome through creativity, discipline, and strategic thinking. The lessons learned during this phase would prove essential for future business ventures that required even greater resource efficiency and innovative approaches to market development. The foundation was being established for expansion into larger opportunities that would test my ability to scale beyond individual consulting expertise toward building organizational capabilities that could operate independently of my personal involvement. The resource challenges had been overcome, but greater tests of business leadership and strategic vision were emerging on the horizon. The confirmation that my specialized approach to ethical business transformation addressed genuine market needs came through an unexpected source that would fundamentally reshape my understanding of professional opportunity and competitive positioning. During my second year of independent consulting, I received an inquiry from Rebecca Martinez, the Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Communications Group, one of the most prestigious public relations firms in Manhattan, who had been observing my work with increasing interest as client organizations began sharing their experiences with my crisis management methodologies. Rebecca's initial contact was prompted by a comprehensive case study that Meridian Financial Services had published about their subsidiary's discriminatory lending remediation, which had attracted significant attention within the financial services industry for demonstrating how proactive ethical transformation could strengthen competitive positioning rather than simply addressing compliance requirements. The case study featured detailed analysis of the strategic framework and implementation processes I had developed, providing concrete evidence of measurable business results that traditional crisis management approaches had failed to achieve. The Sterling Communications inquiry represented a significant validation of my business model, because Rebecca's firm worked exclusively with Fortune 500 companies and had established relationships with the most sophisticated corporate clients in multiple industries. Her interest in my services suggested that large organizations were recognizing the limitations of conventional crisis management approaches and actively seeking innovative alternatives that could address the underlying psychological and organizational dynamics that determined whether technical solutions would succeed. Rebecca requested a comprehensive presentation about my methodologies and track record, which provided an opportunity to articulate the theoretical foundation and practical applications of my approach to senior executives who possessed extensive experience evaluating consulting services and strategic partnerships. The presentation needed to demonstrate sophisticated analytical capabilities while maintaining accessibility for executives who were primarily concerned with business results rather than academic research or psychological theory. The preparation for this presentation required synthesizing 3 years of consulting experience into coherent frameworks that could be understood and implemented by organizations facing diverse challenges across multiple industries. The process revealed that my individual client engagements had been developing consistent patterns and methodologies that represented a comprehensive approach to organizational transformation during ethical and trust crises. The presentation centered on 3 core principles that distinguished my approach from traditional crisis management consulting. The first principle emphasized addressing root causes rather than symptoms, requiring comprehensive analysis of organizational culture, decision-making processes, and stakeholder relationships that contributed to ethical challenges rather than focusing exclusively on immediate damage control and compliance requirements. The second principle involved integrating psychological insights about trust formation and repair with business strategy development, recognizing that sustainable crisis resolution required understanding how different stakeholder groups processed information and made decisions about organizational credibility. This integration enabled more effective communication strategies and stakeholder engagement approaches that could rebuild confidence more quickly and comprehensively than purely rational or technical appeals. The third principle emphasized proactive transformation rather than reactive remediation, positioning ethical challenges as opportunities to implement organizational improvements that would strengthen competitive positioning and operational effectiveness rather than viewing crisis management as minimizing damage to existing business models. The presentation to Sterling Communications was attended by Rebecca and 3 senior partners who possessed extensive experience working with corporations during crisis situations. Their questions and observations revealed sophisticated understanding of the challenges involved in managing organizational reputation and stakeholder relationships during difficult periods, while demonstrating genuine interest in approaches that could produce superior results compared to conventional methodologies. The most significant validation came when Rebecca asked me to analyze a current client situation that Sterling was managing for a major technology company, facing allegations of privacy violations and data mishandling that had attracted regulatory attention and generated negative media coverage. The request provided an opportunity to demonstrate my analytical approach in real time, while offering strategic insights that could be compared directly with Sterling's conventional crisis management recommendations. The technology company case involved complex technical issues related to data encryption and user consent that required understanding both regulatory requirements and consumer psychology about privacy expectations. However, my analysis revealed that the underlying challenge was organizational culture that prioritized rapid product development over comprehensive privacy protection, creating systemic vulnerabilities that would continue generating problems regardless of specific technical fixes. My recommendations emphasize transforming the company's development processes and governance systems to integrate privacy considerations into strategic decision-making, rather than treating data protection as a compliance afterthought. This approach required more substantial organizational changes than Sterling's tactical recommendations, but it promised to eliminate recurring privacy issues while strengthening the company's competitive positioning in markets where consumer trust was becoming increasingly important. Rebecca and her partners were impressed by the comprehensive nature of my analysis and the strategic perspective that connected immediate crisis management with long-term business transformation. More importantly, they recognized that my approach addressed client needs that Sterling's traditional services could not fully satisfy, creating opportunities for collaborative partnerships that could expand both organizations' service capabilities. The validation led to a formal partnership agreement between my consulting practice and Sterling Communications that would provide access to their extensive client base, while enabling me to focus on the specialized expertise that created the greatest value for complex organizational challenges. The partnership structure preserved my independence while providing administrative support and business development resources that could accelerate growth beyond what individual practice development could achieve. Under the partnership arrangement, Sterling would refer clients whose challenges required specialized expertise in ethical transformation and organizational psychology, while I would collaborate with their teams on communication strategy and stakeholder engagement initiatives that required understanding of crisis psychology and trust repair methodologies. This division of responsibilities allowed both organizations to focus on their core competencies while providing clients with comprehensive solutions that neither firm could deliver independently. The first major collaboration involved a pharmaceutical company that was facing multiple lawsuits and regulatory investigations related to clinical trial practices and marketing claims for a major product line. The situation required technical expertise in regulatory compliance, legal strategy, and communication management, but it also demanded sophisticated understanding of public trust in pharmaceutical companies and the psychological factors that influenced patient and physician decision-making during safety controversies. My contribution to the engagement focused on developing stakeholder engagement strategies that could rebuild trust with patients, healthcare providers, and regulatory agencies, while Sterling managed media relations and regulatory communication requirements. The collaborative approach enabled comprehensive crisis response that addressed both immediate damage control needs and long-term reputation recovery objectives. The pharmaceutical engagement demonstrated the effectiveness of combining specialized expertise with established capabilities, producing results that exceeded what either organization could have achieved independently. The client experienced measurable improvements in stakeholder confidence and regulatory relationships, while implementing organizational changes that strengthen their product development and safety monitoring systems. The success of this collaboration validated the market demand for integrated crisis management services that combined technical expertise with psychological insight and organizational transformation capabilities. The validation was further confirmed when 3 additional Sterling clients requested similar collaborative approaches to their own ethical and trust challenges. The partnership with Sterling Communications also provided access to industry intelligence and competitive analysis that revealed broader market trends, supporting the growth potential for specialized ethical transformation consulting. Corporate scandals and ethical challenges were increasing in frequency and complexity as business operations became more global and technologically sophisticated, creating greater opportunities for organizations to inadvertently violate stakeholder expectations or regulatory requirements. Simultaneously, stakeholder expectations about corporate responsibility and ethical behavior were rising significantly, particularly among younger consumers and employees who considered organizational values when making purchasing and career decisions. These demographic trends suggested that proactive ethical transformation would become increasingly important for competitive positioning, rather than remaining an ancillary concern that organizations addressed only during crisis situations. The market intelligence also revealed that traditional management consulting firms were struggling to address ethical challenges effectively because their analytical frameworks emphasized operational efficiency and financial performance, rather than stakeholder psychology and organizational culture. This gap created opportunities for specialized practices that could bridge technical consulting expertise with understanding of human psychology and social dynamics. Rebecca Martinez observed these market trends with strategic interest and provided valuable perspective about positioning my services for maximum growth potential within the evolving consulting industry. Her guidance proved instrumental in developing service offerings and pricing strategies that could capitalize on increasing market demand while building sustainable competitive advantages. The partnership's success attracted attention from other prestigious professional services firms who are recognizing similar gaps in their service capabilities and seeking collaborative relationships that could address client needs more comprehensively. These inquiries provided additional validation of my business model while creating opportunities for expansion that could accelerate growth beyond what the Sterling partnership alone could support. One particularly significant inquiry came from Harrison Legal Partners, a leading corporate law firm that specialized in regulatory defense and white-collar criminal matters. Their clients frequently faced complex ethical challenges that required both legal expertise and organizational transformation support. But the firm lacked internal capabilities for addressing the psychological and cultural factors that determined whether legal strategies would succeed in rebuilding stakeholder confidence. The Harrison Legal Partnership provided access to clients facing the most serious ethical and legal challenges, including criminal investigations, securities fraud allegations, and regulatory enforcement actions that threatened organizational survival. These engagements demanded the highest level of expertise and discretion, while offering opportunities to develop and test crisis management methodologies under the most demanding circumstances. The validation provided by multiple partnership relationships and successful client outcomes confirmed that my transition from individual consulting practice to specialized firm focused on ethical transformation was aligned with significant market opportunities that would support sustainable growth and expansion. The market demand exceeded my initial projections while providing foundation for building organizational capabilities that could operate beyond my individual expertise and availability. The success also validated the strategic decision to focus on specialized expertise, rather than attempting to compete directly with large management consulting firms across broad service categories. The specialization strategy had created distinctive competitive positioning that attracted premium pricing while building relationships with sophisticated clients who valued innovative approaches to complex challenges. As I reflected on the market validation that had emerged over 18 months of partnership development and collaborative client work, I recognized that the foundation was established for scaling beyond individual consulting toward building an organization that could systematize and replicate my methodologies across multiple client engagements simultaneously. The market opportunity was substantial, the competitive positioning was strong, and the partnership relationships provided infrastructure for accelerated expansion. The validation phase had demonstrated that personal experiences with betrayal and recovery could indeed be transformed into professional capabilities that created substantial value for organizations facing similar challenges at institutional scale. The journey from individual crisis to market-leading expertise was nearly complete, with only the scaling and organizational development phases remaining before the ultimate test of encountering the person who had catalyzed this entire transformation. The transition from individual consulting expertise to sustainable organizational capability required systematic preparation that addressed every aspect of business operations, while maintaining the quality standards and strategic focus that had generated initial market success. During my third year of independent practice, the volume of client inquiries and partnership opportunities had exceeded my personal capacity to deliver services effectively, creating the imperative to build systems and hire personnel who could extend my capabilities without diluting the specialized approach that distinguished my firm from conventional crisis management consultancies. The scaling challenge involved multiple interconnected considerations that demanded careful balance between growth ambition and operational excellence. Hiring additional consultants required developing recruitment criteria and training programs that could identify and develop professionals who possessed the analytical capabilities and emotional intelligence necessary for ethical transformation work. Creating systematic service delivery processes required codifying methodologies that had previously existed primarily as personal expertise and intuitive judgment. Establishing quality control systems required developing measurement frameworks that could ensure consistent client outcomes across multiple simultaneous engagements. The foundation for scaling preparation began with comprehensive documentation of the analytical frameworks and implementation processes that had produced successful client outcomes across diverse industries and organizational contexts. This documentation process revealed that my consulting approach had evolved into a sophisticated methodology that integrated insights from organizational psychology, stakeholder management, crisis communication, and business strategy into coherent frameworks that could be taught and replicated by other qualified professionals. The core methodology centered on a 5-phase process that guided organizations through comprehensive ethical transformation rather than superficial compliance improvements. The assessment phase involved systematic analysis of organizational culture, decision-making processes, and stakeholder relationships to identify root causes of ethical challenges, rather than addressing only visible symptoms. The strategy development phase required creating customized approaches that aligned ethical improvements with business objectives while addressing specific stakeholder concerns and competitive dynamics. The implementation phase emphasized change management techniques that could overcome organizational resistance while building internal capabilities for sustained ethical leadership. The monitoring phase involved establishing measurement systems that could track progress across multiple dimensions while identifying emerging challenges before they became serious problems. The optimization phase focused on continuous improvement processes that could strengthen ethical practices over time while maintaining operational effectiveness and competitive positioning. Documentation of this methodology required translation of intuitive consulting expertise into systematic frameworks that could be understood and applied by professionals with different backgrounds and experience levels. The process demanded careful balance between comprehensive guidance and flexibility for adaptation to specific client circumstances and industry requirements. The recruitment strategy for building consulting team capabilities emphasized identifying professionals who possessed strong analytical foundations and demonstrated interest in organizational psychology and ethical leadership, rather than seeking individuals with extensive traditional consulting experience who might require significant retraining in specialized methodologies. This approach enabled development of team members who were aligned with the firm's distinctive approach while avoiding the challenges of modifying established consulting practices that might conflict with ethical transformation requirements. The first senior hire was Dr. Michael Chen, a former academic researcher in organizational behavior who possessed extensive knowledge of trust formation and repair processes, but lacked practical business consulting experience. Michael's theoretical expertise complemented my practical knowledge while providing intellectual foundation for continued methodology development and refinement. His academic background also enhanced the firm's credibility with clients who valued research-based approaches to complex organizational challenges. The integration of Michael's academic expertise with practical consulting requirements demanded development of training programs that could bridge theoretical knowledge with client service delivery capabilities. These programs emphasized case study analysis, role-playing exercises, and supervised client interaction that could develop practical skills while maintaining theoretical rigor and analytical sophistication. The second key hire was Sarah Rodriguez, a former corporate compliance officer who possessed extensive experience with regulatory requirements and internal investigation processes, but sought opportunities to work on proactive organizational improvement rather than reactive problem resolution. Sarah's regulatory expertise provided essential capabilities for addressing compliance requirements, while her interest in preventative approaches aligned with the firm's focus on systematic ethical transformation. Building effective team dynamics among professionals with diverse backgrounds required establishing clear role definitions and collaborative processes that could leverage individual strengths, while ensuring consistent service delivery across all client engagements. The development of these organizational systems tested my leadership capabilities while providing essential preparation for managing larger teams and more complex operational requirements. The technology infrastructure required for scaling operations involved implementing project management systems, document collaboration platforms, and analytical tools that could support multiple simultaneous client engagements while maintaining confidentiality and quality standards. The technology selection process required balancing functionality requirements with budget constraints while ensuring compatibility with client systems and security requirements that characterized corporate consulting environments. The most significant technology investment involved developing proprietary analytical software that could systematize stakeholder assessment and strategy development processes while providing consistent frameworks for measuring progress and identifying optimization opportunities. This software development required collaboration with specialized technology consultants while maintaining focus on practical application requirements rather than theoretical sophistication that might not translate to client value. Quality assurance systems required establishing review processes and performance standards that could ensure consistent client outcomes while providing feedback for continuous improvement of service delivery methodologies. These systems emphasized peer review, client feedback analysis, and systematic documentation of lessons learned that could enhance future engagement effectiveness. The development of comprehensive training materials and standard operating procedures required significant time investment while ensuring that scaling efforts would maintain the quality standards and strategic focus that had generated initial market success. These materials needed to provide sufficient guidance for consistent service delivery while maintaining flexibility for adaptation to specific client requirements and changing market conditions. Financial management systems required sophistication beyond individual consulting practice requirements to support multiple simultaneous projects, personnel management, and technology infrastructure, while maintaining profitability and cash flow stability. The development of these systems required collaboration with financial advisors and accounting professionals who possessed experience with consulting firm operations and growth management. The marketing and business development strategy for a scaled organization required different approaches compared to individual practice development that had relied primarily on professional networking and referral relationships. Scaling required systematic lead generation, proposal development processes, and marketing materials that could support multiple business development initiatives while maintaining the specialized positioning that distinguished the firm from larger competitors. The development of comprehensive service descriptions and pricing frameworks required analysis of market positioning relative to both specialized boutique firms and large management consulting companies. The pricing strategy needed to reflect the premium value of specialized expertise while remaining competitive for sophisticated clients who possessed alternatives for addressing ethical and crisis management challenges. Partnership relationship management required formal agreements and coordination processes that could support expanded service delivery while maintaining the collaborative relationships that had provided essential market validation and client access. These relationships needed to accommodate increased volume and complexity while preserving the mutual value creation that had characterized initial partnership development. The legal and regulatory requirements for business expansion required consultation with corporate attorneys and compliance specialists, who could ensure appropriate corporate structure, employment practices, and professional liability protection. These considerations demanded careful attention to risk management while maintaining operational flexibility for continued growth and adaptation to changing market conditions. Client contract management required standardization of engagement terms and deliverable definitions while maintaining flexibility for customization based on specific client requirements and project complexity. The development of these contract frameworks required balancing comprehensive protection with accessibility for clients who might prefer simpler agreements or different payment structures. The preparation for scaling also required development of leadership capabilities and organizational management skills that extended beyond individual consulting expertise to encompass team development, strategic planning, and operational oversight responsibilities. This leadership development involved formal education, mentorship relationships, and practical experience managing increasingly complex organizational requirements. The most challenging aspect of scaling preparation involved maintaining the personal relationships and individualized attention that had characterized successful client outcomes while developing systems that could deliver comparable value through larger organizational capabilities. This balance required careful consideration of which aspects of service delivery required personal involvement versus systematic processes that could be managed by qualified team members. The preparation phase culminated in development of a comprehensive business plan that outlined growth objectives, resource requirements, and risk management strategies for the next 3 years of organizational development. This plan provided roadmap for systematic expansion, while maintaining focus on the specialized expertise and quality standards that had generated initial market success. The business plan projected doubling of consulting team size within 18 months, while expanding service capabilities to include leadership development programs and ethical governance advisory services that could generate recurring revenue relationships rather than project-based consulting engagements. These expansion objectives required careful balance between growth ambition and operational capability, while ensuring that scaling efforts would strengthen rather than dilute competitive positioning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.